Hey, welcome to another episode of The Art of Making Things Happen with me, Steve Sims, and a phenomenal guest and friend, Naveen Jain, is going to be with us today. He's a well-known serial entrepreneur, billionaire. He's going to be telling us about how the power to dream is so important. He's going to be talking to us about his phenomenal meteorite collection and how people look at problems the wrong way. Okay, this guy's really going to break it down to you. If you ever want to know how to become a billionaire, if you ever want to know how to create impact, if you ever want to think, learn how to think differently, this is the episode you need to be listening to. Enjoy, share, subscribe, tell your friends, enjoy the show and benefit. Hey, Naveen, welcome to the show.
I'm so looking forward to it, Steve. It's always a pleasure to be speaking with you.
For anyone that's not had the privilege and luxury of seeing you and meeting you, there are three things that I find interesting and humorous. A lot of people know that you're a serial entrepreneur. You're a very well-known billionaire that speaks on stages all over the world, giving your advice and expertise to upcoming entrepreneurs. You're the CEO and founder of Viome that we're going to be going through during this podcast. And you also have this very enviable meteorite collection. And I want to pick on that. What made you start collecting meteorites?
Well, it's really interesting about we as humans being explorers, right? And, when you are holding an object in your hand that is from so far away that we can only dream about being there. And you're holding these objects from Moon and Mars and Vesta and these far away galaxies, and you are literally holding that thing. There is an energy that comes into it. And sometimes I actually look at these meteorites under microscope and I'm just analyzing, and I'm just, in my mind starts to wonder, what was going on when these things were being created? Were there humans involved? Were there really what are the ecology of these things that are happening? What if we ended up there? Would we be seeing this thing right there, sitting there somewhere that we picked up, right? And so to me, something about these foreign objects, it brings us one step closer to bringing our dream a real, right? It makes our dream become reality when you're holding these objects in your hand, thinking one day you're going to actually be there and picking up these objects for yourself.
Now, whenever I do a podcast, I'm very focused in not doing too much research. Now, this may sound silly, but I'm a curious kid. And I want to ask the questions that I'm curious on. And a couple of times I've kind of done some research on a podcast, and I've got these 10 questions, and then I've gone off in a completely different direction. And you've just started me off on a different tangent, because I know a lot of successful entrepreneurs and business people. In fact, the pair of us know a lot of the same people because we met with Peter Diamandis and Elon Musk all those years ago. But a lot of successful people are very much focused on the facts and the figures and scientific research, which I know you are, but you got really passionate and excitable then about dreaming and imagining. How important is that to you in order to be able to achieve anything?
Well, Steve, this is really interesting is that, most people who are successful have this canny skill or ability to imagine a world that doesn't exist, right? Most human beings can only see what's in front of them. They can linearly project what it can possibly be. And, when people will say to Steve Jobs that he has this distorted view of the world, and in his mind, it is so clear because he can see it. I mean, when you can actually, voice the word, when you can describe the world in such vivid details that you're literally watching it in front of your eyes, that's how you create that world. And to me, if there is one thing that is common amongst all successful people, it is curiosity, the intellectual curiosity of what the world can be, not what the world is. And if you can look at every single successful person, they had this idea of this crazy thing can actually be done. This crazy idea actually is something that can be real. And a lot of the time it comes from the imagination. And that's the one reason a lot of successful people end up becoming a fan of sci-fi movies, because sci-fi gives them a chance to imagine of what is possible. And every science fiction ultimately becomes a science reality.
Yeah, that is that. Did you grow up? Let's go back to the early Naveen, the young little lad. Did you grow up as a very curious child, and where did you grow up?
Oh, God, Steve, that is the toughest question you could possibly ask me, because our childhood is very faint memories, because we didn't have a place to stay. We didn't have a lot of days food to eat. We were just moving from villages to villages, and it's just don't have a lot of memories. And the only thing I remember, a lot of places there were no schools. We would sit on the dirt and write on the dirt, and some elderly gentleman will come and take a pity on you and teach you things. And I still remember this old man trying to teach me math and these tricks. To date, I can still do the tables in my head, because he told me that how you can take any number and figure out whether it's going to be divisible by 3 or not. And he will give me these long numbers and say, tell me, is it divisible by 3 or not? And he would say, just look at the last digit. Can it be divided by 3 or not? And that's your answer. It's like, oh, right. And he'll give me these simple tricks of finding out these large calculations that everybody is struggling. And he said, here's how you do it, right? And to me, that is just, so, what I'm trying to tell you is that I was always so curious. I would take something that is at home and I'll break it apart. And my mom would always say, oh my God, you're such a destructive child, but you have this curious mind. I know one day you're going to be very successful. And then she would go on to say the magical thing, sky is the limit. That means even though she loved me, she put a limit out there of what I can be, without realizing the sky doesn't exist. The sky is a figment of our imagination. We create these skies in our ways when we do things, and we call these things, this is my limit, right? And we call, those are the skies. These skies don't exist. When you reach there, you don't say, hey, mom, I just saw a sky. I'm just passing sky. There is no sky. But my point is, these are the things we do in our life every single day. Oh, I am an immigrant. I can't do this. I don't speak like them. I can't do that. That's my sky, right? And once we get to a certain point, we realize, what was I thinking? There was no sky here. There was no limitation there. We put that in our mind. Our mind creates our belief system, and that belief system changes our actions, right? Our mind is so powerful. It actually starts to deliver what you start to tell it. That means the stories you tell yourself is what ends up becoming true. So when I tell myself and say, I think the world sucks and world is not going to be helping me, everyone is after me. Guess what? I see every person is actually harming me. Every person who is bitter is surrounded. I surround myself with those people. And when I look at the world and say, oh my God, universe is my friend. I put intent out there and it becomes real. I know it can be done. And suddenly I find people around me who say, you know what, Naveen, I was just listening to you about this. I know this person who can help you. And suddenly the universe starts to bring pieces in place to make your dreams come true. And you and I have talked about it in the past, that it is simply when an event happens, we have this tendency to want to label that event right away. Oh, is it good or is it bad? And just by labeling it, our emotional state changes. So when we say something is bad, suddenly we feel sad and we feel, oh my God, this shouldn't have happened. Why does universe is trying to do this to me? And when we say this is good, and suddenly we are euphoric. The point is that event that we're talking about, we may not know for a decade Is it actually good or bad? Because anything that looks bad today may turn out to be the pivotal thing that happened in your life that made you who you are. And you look back and say, but for that event, I wouldn't be who I am today. So how can that event would have been bad at that time, right? Even though it looked one of the worst things that happened. And not trying to go there. A lot of the times when people get divorced and they would say, oh my God, my life is ended. And at 10 years from now, they say, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. And my point is, that is literally about, so don't focus on the event. You simply say, it is, it happened. It is what it is, right? And that's it. And that means it will be, we won't know is it good or bad for a decade. So I'm not going to make any decision, any emotional baggage create out of this event.
Oh, I love that. I've always said that successful people look at things that went wrong and they lean into them to see, what they can learn from that moment. Yep. So you've just said it very, very colorfully. What was the conduit, the spark in you? What was your first business that you went, maybe I'm a little bit different. Maybe I've got something special. So what was the first business that you did that you went, I am something?
It really is, these type of things, it really is the moment, people tend to rewrite the history and they come back and say, oh, I was looking for a patch dispenser for my wife, so I started eBay. For heaven's sake, it's not how it happens, right? There's a lot of things that are happening, and there just happens to be the story that ends up getting picked, right? So what I'm trying to say is, it's rarely that particular moment, but like I can remember my first company that I started, that went on to be an extremely successful company. And it's really interesting thing is, it's rarely what you start with that really matters, what actually ends up happening. You start with something that actually becomes things you experiment with. That experiment allows you to get more ideas, and you constantly are adapting and pivoting. And when you end up, you rewrite the history, how when you were a child, you always dreamed about this. That happens to be incidentally what you just discovered. The fact is you just discovered it. Then you go back and start writing the history about how you always wanted to be the person wanting to go to the moon. And the answer was, when I was a child, I was trying to figure out how am I going to have a food. I wasn't going to go to the moon. Right? But so what I'm trying to say is that in this first company, the interesting thing that happens to me is people think, you have to have this crystal ball that sees the future. And what I realize is a lot of times it is the intuitive nature of the things that are there that allows you to see these possibilities. So let me tell you, the first business I started was actually start thinking about generating the services for cell phones that did not exist. There were very few people had cell phones, and the best cell phones were out there were these Motorola, the Star Trek, the flip phones, and you're too young to remember them, right? But those were the most powerful phones. And I start thinking, oh my God, this phone, what if this phone could actually be connected to the modem and has access to the internet? Suddenly all the information will be on your fingertips. And wouldn't it be lovely to actually have your email and your contact and your messaging, everything coming here? And the reason I was not like I'm somehow had a crystal ball. I was holding Palm Pilot. I'm thinking, really? I can do all my email and contact and calendar on Palm Pilot. And then I used to have these tiny pagers. I don't know if you still remember pagers that you buckle into your clip belt. And that's how people actually paged you, right? The messaging, right? And then they had this flip phone. And I said, look, imagine a phone that you'll be able to get your email, calendar, contact, messaging. And people say, what are you hallucinating? Not in our lifetime. In this tiny phone, how are you ever going to get that? In my mind, I was thinking, why can't you put a phone on a Palm Pilot? You can get everything on that. And this literally became the Apple iPhone. And this story I'm not rewriting, and tell you why. If you Google in year 2000, that is 7 years before the Apple announced iPhone, I have an interview with this woman named Leslie Walker at Washington Post, and I was running this company called InfoSpace. And she tells me, tell me what you see happening in the future. And I said, imagine You're holding your phone, getting your email, contact, calendar. And by the way, it will know when you're driving by Starbucks, it will send you a coupon for Starbucks. And one day you won't have to carry your credit card because you'll be paying with your cell phone. And this lady, literally this interview you can Google, and she tells me, I have no idea, sir, what do you drink, but not in our lifetime. And when the iPhone got announced, I called Leslie, I hope you're still alive, it's happening. Right? Because my point was, to me, it wasn't a crystal ball. It was simply looking at the things that were already there. They just needed to be put together in a way that will become more meaningful, right? And that's literally is every time I do is look at the industry from outside in to see what are the things that people are looking at. The experts in that industry are fundamentally bound by the limitations that they have created for themselves. They take the foundation of everything that they do as given, whereas non-experts come in, challenge that foundation and saying, what if that is not true? And can you go back and recreate, reimagine this industry? And that's where the disruption happens, right? Automobile companies would have never created an electric vehicle. And here is a guy named Elon comes along and says, I'm going to create an electric car. Nobody ever told him there has not been a car company created in the last 50 years, let alone an electric car company. It didn't faze him. He went on, and today, if you look at Tesla, it is now valued more than most other car companies combined. Right? What was it? It was simply the belief of what needed to happen and really not taking no for an answer and not letting someone else tell you what can't be done, what is it that you can't do. And a lot of it, Steve, comes from, to me, is falling in love with yourself. And what I mean by that is really simple. Most people live their life looking for other people's approval. And when you are doing that, when someone says, oh, that is a foolish idea, you say, oh, you may be right, I won't do it, right? Or that can never be done. Oh, maybe you're right, actually, I won't do it because I might fail, right? But someone who just says to me, I look at myself and say, I love myself, doesn't mean I'm self-conceited. All that means is I don't need your approval. So when someone comes and says, oh, it can't be done, and I say, you know what? I appreciate, can you give me what are the reasons why you believe it can't be done? Because I want to make sure that is there something I have missed here? So I want to learn from all these cynics, but doesn't mean I'm going to change my mind. And then I ask them a slightly different question. And which is really what interesting thing happens. So when someone says it can't be done, I say, okay, now help me understand what will need to happen for it to be done. That means what technologies do we have missing for it to be possible? And suddenly they go into this solution mode. Oh, we can't live on Venus. Oh, really? So help me. Now, what would allow us to live on the Venus? Well, we have to have a thing to be able to leave the Earth orbit and go outside the Earth orbit. You mean rockets? We got those. Right, good. Then can we travel from here to the Venus? Well, we have traveled here to the Mars. That's a pretty easy part to do. There is no gravity. There is no friction. We know how to do that. Well, to be able to land on that planet that has very thin atmosphere, you mean landing through cranes and stuff that we did on Mars? I think we got that figured out. And then they asked you this magical question. Then, got it. So now, how are you going to grow the food? Well, oh, that one, great. Now, why do we eat food? And that's where you start to challenge. If you simply look at a question of how to grow the food, guess what? The only solution is find a way to grow the food. But when you change that question to say, so why do we eat food? You say, oh, we eat food only because we need energy and we need nutrition. What are the different ways we can get energy? There are a lot of bacterial species who get energy from radiation because they're growing in the radioactive nuclear waste. And there are plants who get energy from sun using photosynthesis. Can we take these genetic material from these, put them in us, use CRISPR, and next thing we know, we got plenty of energy we want from radiation, from photosynthesis. The nutrition part is interesting. What kind of nutrition do we need? Hydrogen, oxygen. Oh, what if there is water? Won't water H2O give us hydrogen and oxygen? And suddenly the problem that looked, you can't live there, say, oh yes, but you're missing nitrogen. Very interesting. So now the only problem we have to live on the Venus is missing nitrogen. Let's go figure out how are we going to get nitrogen on the Venus. And suddenly the thing, you can't say you can't do that anymore. All you have to say is you got to find a way to get the nitrogen there. Right? And then you have a problem solved. Right? And that is a simple way of taking any problem and you start to break it down when someone says it can't be done, is to make them part of the solution, to say what will need to happen for it to be done. And then suddenly you have a solution.
I love that. Breaking it down, eating an elephant an inch by an inch. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And I think a lot of people are going to be starting to look at problems differently now, as you've explained there. I remember seeing a speech with you once, and you're great on stage. So if anyone is ever out there thinking, hey, they need a good speaker, and if Navin's available, then, book him. Simple as that. I remember seeing you go on stage and someone saying, oh, how do you become a billionaire? And you just turned around and said, answer a billion people's problems.
Yes.
And I remember you, and it was quite powerful because, again, you brought it down to its most simplest first step question. The one thing, what was the problem? You've actually moved into doing that in a medical field within something that you founded, and you're going to explain. You founded Viome. Why? What does it do? And what really interested you to get involved in Viome?
Well, interestingly, as you know, I was doing my other company, which is in the space exploration, Moon Express, right? And then I started to think about, if I'm going to dedicate 10, 15 years of my life to something, what should I do that could help a billion people live a better life, right? And this is the question, right? Because if you want to create $100 billion company, it's really easy. Go find something that will improve a billion people's lives. And if you do that, you can create $100 billion company. But you can't set out to create $100 billion company. You got to stay focused on making people's life better. Now, I start thinking, what are the couple of things that I could literally put my arms around and say, these problems are massive problems. You look at healthcare, you look at education. These are massive, multi-trillion-dollar problems, and say, what if you could solve them? And I looked at both education, I looked at healthcare, and it turns out the problems are very similar in both areas. People somehow think these things are broken. Well, it turns out that neither one of them is actually broken. They're doing exactly what they were designed to do. Our education system was designed to teach us skills. In the industrial era, if you had the skills, you could, the rest of your life, you had a job and you had a successful career and everything was fine. Now we're living in this world of exponential technologies, and where any skill you learn becomes obsolete by the time you graduate. So how does an education system that is teaching you skill is no longer applicable? So it's not broken, it is obsolete. Right. And when something is obsolete, you don't say, oh, it is broken. Like you tell your grandpa who is using a flip phone, my favorite flip phone, and say, grandpa, your phone is broken. We say, what is grandson broken? I dial the number, it dials the thing, which is what it was designed to do. And it does that perfectly well. But it wasn't designed to play Angry Bird on it, and obviously it doesn't, right? But you can't say that, grandpa, your phone is broken because it doesn't play Angry Birds on it, right? Or whatever the latest game is. Right?
Yeah, you've just dated yourself there, I think. And me too. I know Angry Birds, but I don't know the latest one.
But you get my point. That's literally what that used to be in the early days, right? But the point I'm trying to make is the same thing happened. So in education system, we have to change that. Learning to learn, learning to solve problems, learning to be multidisciplinary to be able to solve problems and all that. But in healthcare, I thought was very interesting that everyone always focus on saying chronic diseases is something that just happened to you. When you age, you're going to have these diseases. And it occurred to me, why is it that people develop these diseases? There's nothing in the body that says, you are 40, you're going to be obese. You are 50, you're going to have this disease. There's nothing there, right? And some people can be healthy and some don't. Identical twins can develop totally different diseases. So it's not. So this is literally what happened. I say, look, what if we can prevent and reverse chronic diseases? And I think you and I have talked about a framework, so I'm not going to go through that, or maybe actually I will. I have this framework
these people haven't heard this before, so please don't spare us. Tell us.
Okay, so this is, interestingly, I have a framework that I use every time I start a company or a project. Number one thing is, why this? Why now? Why me? Why this is, God forbid I am actually successful in solving this problem, would it help 1 billion people live a better life? That tells me, is this problem worth dedicating 10 years of your life to? Would it move the needle? And again, that's my part of doing good. But the other part that comes right back is, if I can solve 1 billion people's problem, I can create a $100 billion company, right? So I go out and say, is this problem $100 billion problem? Or in other words, is it a problem that will help 1 billion people live a better life? Why now is really simple. That says, what had changed in last 1 year? But most importantly, what do you expect to happen in the next 3 to 5 years that will allow you to solve this problem today than it was possible a decade ago? That means, are you using the most cutting edge stuff that allows you to say this time is now? Because most companies fail when you are actually solving a problem either using old technology that becomes obsolete and someone comes along, or you're too far ahead of your time when the technology is not ready for you, right? So the point is to find the timing is really good. And I'll tell you how I applied this to Wyoming. And the last part is why me? And why me is the most important part that you need to remember. What question am I asking that is different from what everyone else in the industry that I'm about to be entering is asking? That means, what problem are you trying to solve which is different from what everyone else? Because the question you ask is the problem you solve, right? So now let me apply this to Wyoming when I start. And I said, if we can prevent and reverse chronic diseases, would it help 1 billion people? Answer was 7.4 billion people, check mark. Next, now, why now? We say to solve this problem, you have to be able to digitize the human body, sequence the human body of everything that's happening in the human body. Cost of sequencing was about $1,200. I was convinced in the next 3 years, it's going to come down to $100. It so happened, cost came down to $10. And that's the power of exponential technology. When you think you're being 10 times optimistic, it actually brings you down that you're actually 10 times pessimistic, because the technology moves faster than you actually believe it does, right? And I think the best example, I think we talked about in our last talk that we did, is that human mind cannot understand the exponentiality ever. So if I tell people today that I will give you $100 million right now, or you have other choice, the door B, I'll give you $1 today. And for the next 30 days, I'm going to double it every day. So $1 today, $2 tomorrow, $4 the next day, $8 the day after, 16 after. And people say, oh, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. This is piddly amount. I'll take $100 million any day. In 30 days, it's not going to be anywhere near that, without realizing on 30th day that $1 today, by doubling, is going to become $1 billion. That means day 29, it was $500 million. You just lost out a massive amount of money because you couldn't understand the power of doubling every day for 30 days. That's it. 30 doubling later, the $1 becomes $1 billion. And that's the beauty of these exponential technology, right? Now, obviously, the cost of processing had to come down, and we were convinced that the cloud computing is going to bring the cost of the processing down. AI is going to become more and more powerful. Now, that was the reason to say this is the timing is now. Now, the last part was the most important, why me? And we saw that everybody in the industry was focused on two things. One was wanting to know your DNA, and they were thinking that once we understand the human genes, we will know the software of the human body. Well, in my opinion, we said, wait a sec, that is a wrong question people are asking. Your DNA never changes when you become obese. Your DNA never changes when you become depressed. Your DNA never changes when you become diabetic. So how can you tell me that, am I moving towards become diabetic? Am I really becoming depressed? How do you know when your DNA is not even changing? So your genes don't change, but your gene expression is always changing. And what if you could measure gene expression? And people say, that's a crazy idea. You cannot measure gene expression. You cannot measure RNA. RNA is short-lived. You will never be able to do that. And I said, that's good. But if we could, won't it solve the problem? And people say, of course it will. Good. The second thing was I start thinking about why do identical twins develop different diseases? And there was all the research is starting to show there's something in our gut called these gut microbiome, the 39 trillion of them living in our gut. When they release, when the food we eat, they metabolize the food and they release these molecules called the micropoop. So basically, human body is surviving on microbiome poop. They poop out the stuff that we feed them, and that poop is really what makes all our body work. Our human genes are expression is changing when they, depending on their poop. When they poop out butyrate, our immune system calms down. When they start to poop out LPS, lipopolysaccharide, our immune system starts to inflame. When we feed them broccoli, and if they can't digest broccoli properly, they release sulfide. It causes inflammation. And we say, oh, don't eat sulfide. Right? So point I'm trying to make is then we said, oh my God, what if we can, instead of looking at what organisms are in your gut, what if we can find out what they are producing? Wouldn't that be really nice? That instead of worrying about who is there, we figure out what they are actually doing. And that the reason for that was I thought these organisms are like human beings. Same person can do good thing or bad things depending on the environment the person is in. Sometimes a good person would do bad things when they are in bad environment, and the bad person can do good things in a great environment. And the point is, what is happening, what they are doing is what makes you sinner, not that you're born sinner. So humans are not sinner. They do things that are bad that makes them sinner, right? And that is the question, right? So in our case, we say, what if we can find out what organisms are producing and what genes are being expressed? You can solve this problem. And based on that, we focused on finding a technology that could measure gene expression. Found that technology at Los Alamos National Lab, where they are developing it for biodefense work. And suddenly, we had a company that can measure gene expression. So here's what happens, Steve. Fast forward 5 years, we have now analyzed 250,000 people. We looked at their blood and we said, here is what genes are being expressed in your body. We look at their stool by looking at everything that their microbes are producing. And we say, based on this, Steve, you should not eat spinach because your oxalic acid or oxalate in the spinach is not being digested properly. You're going to get a kidney stone. Don't eat broccoli and cabbage because they contain too much sulfate, and your gut microbiome are producing too much sulfide, you're going to have too much inflammation. And remember, all the protein powder that you're eating, it's actually not being digested. And that protein is going to your gut, and these microbes are fermenting it and creating ammonia, which is causing more inflammation in your body. And you should take these digestive enzymes or cut down your protein. And by the way, don't eat bell pepper because you have this virus in your gut that is actually being fed by this bell pepper. Don't eat that. Right? Now, here are the foods that are good for you, and here is why. Here are the foods that you should avoid and why. And by the way, you need 22 milligram of lycopene, which comes from tomatoes, but you can't eat tomatoes because of you have a tomato virus. And by the way, you need about 11 milligram of fisetin. And by the way, that is in a strawberry, but strawberry has this histamine that is causing inflammation in your body. So I'm going to tell you to avoid strawberry, but I'm going to put the fisetin in your supplement. And we tell you all these ingredients, what quantity, what dosage you need. And we literally make those capsules for you, tailor-make for you on demand. And we make those capsules and ship it to you. And what we found was in 4 months, people are telling us their diabetes is gone. They no longer have depression. They no longer have anxiety. They no longer have IBS symptoms. Their acne is gone. Their eczema is disappearing. And we didn't set out to cure these diseases. All we did was trying to reduce the inflammation in the body. And these chronic diseases are caused by chronic inflammation. And when you get rid of the flame inside your body, suddenly the things that we call diseases were nothing but the symptoms that were popping up. You have eczema because you're a flame that's burning inside you. And when you get rid of the flame, guess what? The skin becomes nice and soft. So we found now suddenly people are telling us they don't have a brain fog. And interestingly, we found we can reduce clinically the depression by 32%. Anxiety by 29% in 4 months. We show that clinically, we have done the research now, IBS goes down by 36%. Diabetes risk goes down by 30%. And our hope really is, what if the food is the only medicine that we really needed in our life? Now, imagine for a second. People think, what a breakthrough idea. And we'd say, this is what we knew 2,500 years ago when Hippocrates says, let food be thy medicine. And you talk about this gut thing you talk about, what did he say? All diseases begin in the gut. That's literally what he says 2,500 years ago, that your gut microbiome causes you to have these diseases. All diseases begin in the gut. Let food be thy medicine. And there was another philosopher who says, one man's food is another man's poison. That means a food that is good for you can be bad for someone else. Even the food that's good for you today may not be good for you a year from now, because your body is changing, your gut microbiome is changing, and the food that are good for you suddenly become bad. And we know that intuitively. We are able to eat yogurt one day, and a year later, it's like, oh my God, I got bloating now, right? I can't eat that anymore, right? And that's literally what happens. Our people now report they sleep better, they don't have bloating, they don't have digestive issues. And by the way, now their depression, anxiety, brain fog is gone. And we never make these claims because we're not trying to cure these diseases. Simply reducing inflammation in your body, your symptoms of the disease go away. And I really hope, Steve, is that people get to know about this, because I believe the future of healthcare is at home, not at the hospital. And future of medicine is going to come from the farm, not pharmacy. And that is the world we want to create. And when I started Viome, our tagline was very simple. Imagine living in a world where illness is optional. We didn't say, imagine living in a world there is no illness, because that means I have the power to create that world. No, I say you have a power in you not to be sick. And I'm going to tell you what you need to do that. But option is yours. That's why we said, imagine living in a world where illness is optional. That means it's your choice.
Wow. Now, when you said you were looking for a goal to help a billion people, that's a big goal. How long's Viome been going now?
So we have been doing it for about 5 years. We started shipping it to customer about 3.5 years ago. And we have had 250,000 people signed up. And it's really, and the thing is, it's like a flywheel, because what happens, Steve, is every single person who joins not only benefits from everyone who came before them, they contribute to make everyone else better. And then when you do the retest, we simply look at you as an N of one. Why the things that work for other people is not working for Steve? And we keep improving until it works for you. And then we learn why it didn't work for you for the first time. And then we make that pattern for everyone else, so everyone else can benefit from it.
So you're doing a big data grab on lots of people to benefit and to, again, make illness optional. How much is it to join?
But so first of all, it's really interesting. When we started the company, the cost of doing this test was $1,000, and we constantly, made everything automated. And the cost now has come down to $149. Our cost, by the way, so is $129. We make $20 profit on every time, and that's it. And the reason is, as our cost came down, we reduced the cost for everyone because we want to make it affordable. And I've always believed the best way to do good in the world is not to do a nonprofit, but to do a for-profit company making just a little bit money so that you are able to help more people, because that profit allows us to go from 1,000 to 10,000 to 100,000 to million to 10 million. Because if you are the richest man in the world and if you keep losing money, then sooner or later you're going to be running out of money and you can only have a small good. So I tell people, if you want to do small good in the world, start a nonprofit. If you want to do a large good in the world and to help 1 billion people, start a for-profit, because profit is the engine that allows you to scale and help more people.
Oh, I absolutely love that. We're going to be putting Viome in the show notes here so everyone can get over to it. Is there anywhere else apart from Viome that you would want people to go and find out about you or any other projects that you're involved in?
Steve, you can always find me on all social media. I am very active on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Instagram, or follow me on Clubhouse, and I would be doing the Ask Me Anything. So you can ask me any questions you have that Steve didn't get to ask, and then you can continue to have this dialogue. Just remember, I am here to help, and I need your help. We need to have 2 million people come together, because this is not my problem. This is our problem. If we want this problem solved, it's not just for us and our parents, it is for our children and grandchildren. If we don't solve this problem, we're going to watch them suffer. So if we can come together as community and contribute to our AI engine, we will know exactly why people are becoming sick. And we can help these people simply using food and supplements as a way to prevent them from happening and reverse when it has gone farther than we like, right? And to me, that is the key. And I need everyone who's listening to it to spread the word. Go to Viome.com, sign up. When you sign up, not only you benefit, you help everyone else get better, because the information you contribute makes everyone else. We learn from it to make everyone else better.
Oh, that's fantastic. As always, Naveen, you're a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of giving. So we really appreciate you taking time to be on this show today. You came on to the Sims Distillery and Speakeasy AMA a little while ago and just blew everyone away. And I know that when they hear this interview, they're going to be equally as impressed. And quite simply, as I said earlier, they're going to look at problems differently. And I'm sure they're going to want to help to contribute to their own problem by helping everyone else and helping you get a result for them. So, Naveen, thank you very, very much for your time today.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. You know, you are probably one of the best communicators out there, and I cannot wait for you to guide me about how do we take this magic of Viome and spread it to the world. So I'm looking forward to your help.
You know I'm going to be helping you. All right, Naveen, thank you very much, and I'll speak with you soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed another episode of The Art of Making Things Happen with me, Steve Sims. And just imagine if you were in a room with these people, some of the listeners, some of the guests, some of my friends. Well, you can be if you attend a speakeasy. Just head on over to simsspeakeasy.com and you'll find out all about the details of our next event, location, city that we're in. And quite simply, they're there to make you smarter and more impactful. If that's the kind of thing you want to do, you know where to go. simsspeakeasy.com. I'll see you there or speak with you soon on the next episode. Bye.